Okay, so we're going to limit the questions to people who are standing currently for the sake of time. So if you're standing, you will get a chance to ask your question, but please don't get into line anymore. For now, we're going to take a question from online.
All right, first we have a follow-up from Mr. Walter once more for Max. If God is all-knowing, then how can we have this freedom that you speak of?
Yeah, you ever see the movie Spaceballs? The movie Spaceballs, like they want to know what's gonna happen next in the movie, so they pull out the video and they turn it on, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I know what to do next." Just because God can see all times and all things, and all that's going to happen, doesn't mean He causes it to happen. He's outside of time. He's outside of the universe. He lets things be done by us that are going to be done. He doesn't control them, but He certainly knows them. Now, I can't do that if I knew it was Ryan was going. But if I could even, let's say that somehow I was given this gift to somehow know Ryan's future actions, it wouldn't control his future actions. It simply means somehow I get to know them. It's kind of like that other movie. It's like, the crimes are going to be committed, so they go and stop them or something like that. But God, anyway, God doesn't do that.
It's perfect that you passed the mic. This next question is for Ryan. This is from a Mr. Anthony. Where is it that you believe that your soul goes when you die?
Okay, great question, Anthony. First of all, I reject the notion that I have a soul. There's not sufficient enough evidence to show that I do or that anybody else does, or the concept of an eternal soul. That being said, if I do have a soul and it goes somewhere after I die, that simply is not here. I can't make a claim on where it goes because I do not know. So if my soul exists, it'll go exactly where it came from, and that is not here.
All right. My name's Thomas. This is a question for Max. So, Maryville is like dominantly, just for me driving around, it's a Christian community, correct? Let's say if you were raised in India, you would be Hindu, or if you were in the Middle East, you'd be Muslim, yeah? Or just maybe if you were in like historic Africa, you could maybe even like worship a god that has a random name. What makes you more righteous or confident to talk about the teachings of Christ than a rabbi would talk about their God, the Jewish God? Like, what
Absolutely.
makes you more confident to be able to simply be so secure and I don't want to say conditioned to say such a thing that you're right?
Yeah. Good question. For me personally, I didn't care about God for many years, and I wasn't into religion whatsoever. In fact, I hated going to church. I would go there and I'd count the number of lines left in the song. I'd say, okay, 8, okay, 7, okay, 6, okay, time to go. So for me, I didn't simply pick this up by being sort of trained in some kind of Jedi camp of Christian warriors, But I was invited by someone to come to retreat to see, that they went to and experience God, and I went there and I did. What I experienced there accorded both with my reasonable sense of what was going on, but also with that I experienced things that God cared for me, and so. When I come to defend Christianity, I come with my reason intact, with my knowledge of what I know from creation, whether it be from modern physics or whatever that points to a singularity, whatever. But also just, I come from experience as well. And I don't discount anybody who comes from an experience from somewhere else and seeks truth either. If someone grows up in a culture and it's primarily Jewish and they follow their faith and they seek to do what is right, I don't call myself better than them or something. But I do say that if there's a difference in belief, that both can't be true exactly in the same way at the same time. Now, does the Jewish understanding of God differ from mine? In basic, no, it doesn't. The Jewish God, the Muslim God, my God, is the same God, but we believe we have certain things given us by God to know of Him, that Jesus is God and that God is a Trinity, that tell us something maybe a little more than that. And beyond that, what Jesus promises as far as salvation, I believe, and I've seen it is a better overall promise. Again, does that discount anybody personally? From God's standpoint, we're all the same. From our standpoint, we have to seek the truth.
Time.
All right. My name is Nick, and my question's for Max, of course, because all these questions seem to be for him. So would you say that people tend to use religion as a crutch to justify wrongful actions that they tend to do in everyday life?
I think people could use religion or the lack thereof as a crutch for that. I think people could even use atheism for that. I'm not saying Ryan does, but I think people could actually say, well, God doesn't exist anyway. There's no truth in that. So what I'm doing doesn't really matter. I can do wrong to someone. They could use it in that way. I mean, certainly Joseph Stalin did, right? Not a nice guy. But people can use religion also to excuse things they've done badly. I'm not defending every person who's ever been religious in their life or used religion for whatever purposes. What I'm defending is the thing itself. The thing itself, there's Jesus himself. You can certainly, now if you actually, Gandhi said, the problem with Christianity is not that it doesn't work, but it's never been tried. And I think that's true in a lot of our lives. Do we really apply our own Christian faith, even if we're Christian, to everything that we do and become who we're supposed to be in that? If we did, wow. I mean, if we all were acted like Jesus, I don't think we have a problem. Now, yeah, that's what I said.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So you said that atheism can be used in that same manner, and I would disagree with that statement because atheism is not a claim of anything. So you can't say that, and typically like Stalin and that he didn't do the things he did because he was an atheist. So I don't think even in that manner it can be used. But now as far as using it as a crutch to say, oh, I can do things now because I have salvation or mercy. I think people do use that. Now, I did spend some of my life in Christianity. So I as a Free Will Baptist at one point, in the Church of Christ, they explained to us that you can fall out of grace by living your life in that manner. So I think some sects of Christianity you wouldn't be able to use salvation as a crutch.
Thank you. This question also goes to Ryan. What sources do you refer in your belief that Jesus was born and lived outside the Bible?
So I couldn't cite any exact sources. Now, as far as like the crucifixion, there is I can't give you the exact source, but I know there's Roman doctrine too that shows that he was crucified, or a guy named Jesus was crucified. Now, is it the same Jesus that was in the Bible? We don't know. But there was a man who lived named Jesus, and he did get crucified by the Roman Empire. Now, as far as the exact location of that site, or that I can't cite that exactly, and I apologize for that. Thank you.
First, I'd like to apologize. That question came from a Miss Nicola off of our Twitter account. But moving on to the next question. This is from a Mr. Andrew. And the gist of the question is, what is our purpose? Is it to win? Is it to gain a following? To educate? All sides seem to be failing miserably. And this goes to both Ryan and Max.
Okay. So, so the idea of...
No. The real reason we had this debate is to get you extra credit for it.
Yeah, that's right. That was the reason. That was the purpose of this. Was it was a conspiracy on our end. No, the idea of purpose, I think, it needs to be discussed. Obviously, do we create our own purpose, or is purpose set for us before we are alive? As far as like life having a purpose, that's like saying the universe has a purpose. There's no drive to biology. It just acts. When we talk about life, we're talking about how things, the nature of things, and how they move or how they interact with each other. So when we talk about purpose, I think that we create our own purpose out of the environment that we're put in. So if I was born in a third world country, my purpose would be a lot different than if I was born here in America. And that may be due to the fact that within the borders of a third world country, there's a lot less material things to help my existence. So it's driven by our environment as well, but I don't think there's an actual purpose that's set for us in the sense that someone said it, not a purpose giver, if you will, but we create our own purpose, and that is determined by how we see value in others.
As to the purpose of the debate, which is part of the question too, I think, yeah, I mean, if someone feels convinced by something, they should feel convinced by it and go with it. I mean, if they don't feel convinced, they shouldn't go with it. And if, you know, I think the truth should win people over, not me, not Ryan, you know, and I think Ryan agrees with that. That's why we had this debate. We actually do believe that there is a truth and that yeah. So that's what I would say about that question. I think we can discern a purpose in life, but I think we also can discern that God exists, you know? And I think Christianity then reveals to us a clearer sense of our purpose of life, and that a clear sense of God and who he is. So I agree with Ryan that we look to other people, and if we can see them as valuable, that gives us some sense of our purpose of life. I mean, and I think just one basic way to do that, just from reason, is that, you know, I can see that you have freedom, I have freedom. I have to respect your freedom, you respect my freedom. It's part of what we're doing today. And I can see that you have intelligence, and I have intelligence. I have to respect your intelligence, you respect my intelligence. So we both know, just from reason, we both have freedom and intelligence, and we should respect the freedom and intelligence of each other for the purpose of our intelligence discovering what is true and our freedom living out what is right. And we might not be able to understand clearly what that is on our own, and that's why I believe Christianity, God, gives us more than we could have on our own.
Time.
Yeah.
My question's for Max. I thought it was interesting when you were talking about how the gates of hell were locked from the inside, and that I think you said something along the lines of that God couldn't get them out. How is that possible if he's all powerful?
It's because he gives us freedom. He respects our freedom. It's not that he can't, but he won't. He will not do anything to go against our human freedom, which he gave us as a gift in the beginning. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Okay, my question is for Max. Christianity talks a lot about love and being loving, but there's so much hate connected to Christian movements and many things that Christians do. Why is there so much hate in Christianity if it's considered to be a loving religion?
Thanks for the question. I would disagree that there is hate. I think we have some cultural battles right now that are going on, right? And people are taking sides, right? And so that can kind of cloud the vision to what we really are to each other sometimes. And we might not all agree on everything, you know. Ryan and I don't agree on everything, but I don't think you could see that we hate each other up here. You know, I totally disagree with him. Totally, you know. And there might be things that you and I might disagree on as well, but I don't hate you, and you won't. I hope you don't hate me. You know, I think that we're called to love each other, but not always agree with each other, and that can cause sometimes passionate difficulties and arguments, even in families. You know. But it doesn't negate love, and it doesn't create hate in and of itself unless we let it. So I would say, are there people who use their faith wrongly and hate people? Probably. Are there people who use their lack of faith wrongly and hate people? Probably. I hope it's not us.
Question from the Facebook page from a Miss Christine. This is for Ryan. Have you considered accepting the Pascalian wager?
Oh, Pascal's wager, yes. Pascal's wager, for those who don't know it, kind of help me out here if I get it wrong, but basically it states that what if you're? I'll give it very basic. What if you're wrong, right? And you should live your life by the assumption that God does exist, so that at the end of your life, if you're wrong, you've lost nothing, and you've most likely lived a good life. If you're right, then you can spend eternity with God. The problem with Pascal's wager is it applies to the same person who came up with it. Now, I would turn that around and say, well, what if you're wrong and the Islamic faith is right? Then you have eternity to lose. So in the same manner that Pascal says to the atheist, what if you're wrong? I say it to the Muslim and the Hindu and any other faith-based religion. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add that, I'm not a huge fan of Pascal's wager myself. I think it's very limiting. It's like, come on, is that all we've got? I think we've got much more than that, even from human reason, than simply like, oh, take a guess. It's a better guess. Go for it. It never has really moved me. But I think there are things that can move us to faith, and not just faith, but the understanding of God from reason. Now, Pascal's wager, he wasn't intending to be like his main point anyway. In the Pensées, he just writes a bunch of stuff he thinks about. This is one of the things he thought about. It's a sensible thing to think about. It's not like a plan for life, but yeah.
Just want a quick reminder to all of those that it's not too late. I'm about to read a question again from our Twitter account, #BearcatDebate. This question goes to Max as well. This is from a Mr. Duncan. How do you reconcile the violent God of the Old Testament with the same God of the New Testament?
That was coming. I knew it was coming. Yeah, absolutely. This is probably like one of the best questions and struggles thrown out by like famous atheists right now, right? They're always throwing this one out. Like Bill Maher will catch you on his show and be like, blast you with like, what about this? Absolutely. I mean, there are moments in the Old Testament that can turn our stomach, Joshua goes and like puts the ban on people, which means he slays every single person in the town, from the old man to the baby in the crib, right? Not a good thing to do. I think there are ways to interpret the Bible that are good and ways that are bad. And in the particular interpretation of the Bible that the Catholic Church teaches is that we have to use several keep several axioms in mind when interpreting the Bible. First of all, the Bible is not the Word of God simply in individual phrases or books, but as a whole. You can't just pull one line out and say, well, that's what the Bible says, that's the end, let's go kill somebody. You have to look at through the lens of the entire Bible, and especially the lens of who Jesus is. So who does God reveal himself to be in Jesus? And that's fully who God is. Then everything else has to be interpreted through that lens. Second of all, we've looked at the genre of the book. Those books in the Old Testament often are not intended to be writing strictly literal history, but giving us something that will teach us how we're supposed to relate in relation to God. Now, that being said, the church refers to these as dark and hard passages, things that are hard for us to deal with and require a lot of extra thought beyond just quick glancing. So I'm not going to give you one answer. I'm going to give you two right here.
20 seconds.
20 seconds. Okay. One answer is that not everything is taken literally, and you can see in Christian history that we didn't take it literally because we don't go commit genocide against people all the time. Even the Jews didn't, Second answer would be, at the same time, when God shows us in those stories, what he's really showing us is not to kill people, but Joshua is a symbol of Jesus. It's the same name. And all the people living in that town are a symbol of those who, this is a symbol of temptation. There's a symbolic reading, which was coming from like the year 260, is the idea that we can't leave anything of a temptation or sin in our life to get rid of all of it. It's not talking about actually killing people, but Jesus ridding us of all evil.
Time.
There's more to it than that. 20 seconds out of time. Okay.
My question is for Max. So my understanding of the Holy Trinity is that they're all one, but they're all separate.
Yeah.
But you keep talking about God being Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Jesus is God because Jesus has the same divine nature as the Father and the Holy Spirit. There is one divine nature that exists, God. Jesus has that same nature, the Father does and the Holy Spirit does. Okay? Beyond that, to look at the Trinity, what makes them different? well, what makes them different is their relationship with each other. The Father is not the Son is not the Father, and the Holy Spirit is not either one, but they're all one God. Now you're like, well, how can that be? Well, it's revelation. It's something revealed to us. We can't know it from reason. No one's going to say, I did a math problem. I found that God's 3 in 1. You can't do it. We know it because they knew about God already. Jesus came to earth. He claimed to be God as well. He sent the Holy Spirit. He's God as well. Something's going on here. Let's try to explain it. We'll call it the Trinity. Yeah.
All right, so the first is for Ryan. You said you were a Christian at one point in your life. What caused you to lose your faith?
This is a really difficult question to answer in 5 minutes. There are, just like the argument for God's existence is not one argument, it's a family of arguments. The same applies to my lack of belief, or my being unconvinced. At one point, I did believe in God, and I did have my perception of a relationship with that God. That being said, over time, studying my religion, other religions, arguments against and for both, has caused me to really question my faith. And also, it led me to a point where if I was going to say this was fact and truth, then I had to fully understand it. So going through those arguments, going through other religions, I think Mark Twain at one point in his life even said, we look at our, and this is paraphrased, not quoted, we look at our own religion with scrutiny, but we fail to do that, or we look at other religions with scrutiny, but we fail to apply that same scrutiny to our own. And when I did that, I lost my faith, based on all the arguments surrounding it.
And then another is, what would it take to make you believe again?
Great question. I don't know what it would take for me to believe, but God is apparently all-knowing and all-powerful, therefore he would know what it would take for me to believe. And to follow up with that too, the fact that I don't have a belief in God makes me question God even more. Why would an all-powerful, all-knowing deity cause me to think the way I do with the requirement that I use faith to understand truth, knowing that I don't use faith to understand truth?
All right, and this the last one was for Max. What would it take to cause you to lose your faith?
Is that even fair? No. Yeah, I hope I would never lose my faith. It's kind of like saying, what would it take for me to not love my mom anymore or something? It's like, so I don't know. I can't really, I don't know. That's kind of I don't think I can answer that, because it's sort of like, at this moment, I'm convinced that nothing can, if God supports me, I'll say this, if God stopped giving me his grace and his protection, I would lose my faith. Can I just say that there's like, it's awesome that we're still here. I don't mean on this earth, but but I mean in this room, like this is, you're not, I mean, it was technically over at 8, you got your extra credit, but you're still here. Like it says something about this question, about, the meaning of God's existence, for our life, so.
Hi there, my name's Lily. I have a question for Ryan. My question is about the resurrection. So you said that there's a lot of witnesses, but you said that there's not enough evidence for you. So what I'm confused about is, why would you still not believe whenever the person who condemned him and thought that Jesus was a liar, they have all these written accounts saying that, oh, we were wrong. Oh my goodness, it's God. So here's what Pontius Pilate wrote to King Herod. Are you familiar with both of those biblical features? Okay. So Pilate wrote to Herod. Where should I start? Because it's all very good. Know and see that in the day when thou didst deliver Jesus unto me, I took pity on myself and testified by washing my hands that I was innocent. Concerning him who rose from the grave after 3 days, and had performed thy pleasure in him. For thou didst desire me to be associated with thee in his crucifixion. But I now learn from the executioners and from the soldiers who watched his sepulchre that he rose from the dead. And I have especially confirmed what he told me, that he appeared bodily in Galilee. And it goes on and on to talk about how his wife went and saw him, and how his wife believed in Jesus, and how the soldier who pierced Jesus' side actually had a huge conversion. And a lot of the Romans who were there were watching this man who was suffering a lot of burdens that a normal human man couldn't physically handle. And he kept going. So I don't know. I would just love to hear why you don't think that Jesus rose from the dead.
Okay, so first of all, if we're going to consider the conversion of those people who didn't believe to belief, then we should also consider those who did believe and converted to non-belief as evidence.
That has to do with the resurrection, change their opinion to, like, that's when is there a witness that you can think of that witnessed Jesus' resurrection and then or that was at the cross and then switched?
Sure. I think,
Thank you.
I need a Bible for this, actually. There is a verse, and I'm going to be lost on where it is, but it says that I think Paul in a letter to the Corinthians, I believe
Paul died for Jesus' death.
Sure, but in a letter to the Corinthians, he states that these witnesses are still alive. I'm pretty sure it's Corinthians. I'm most likely wrong, though. He said that these witnesses were still alive and that you could go talk to them, although some of them have fallen asleep. So some of those people who witnessed or who were recorded witnessing the resurrection of Jesus did lack of belief later in life.
Just to clarify.
Well, it doesn't give, and that's the problem. It doesn't give names of the witnesses when they say the 500 saw Jesus, just as much as it doesn't give the names of those witnesses who fell away from that faith. Yeah, no problem.
The fallen asleep doesn't mean that they gave up their faith. It means they died.
Well, they say they went to sleep.
That's what it means. But it means that these Christians who were witnessed Jesus' resurrection, like, they've died since then. That's what it means. I mean, there certainly are people who've left Jesus, right? But I don't know. What she's saying is those who actually witnessed resurrection, the resurrection of Jesus, have they left? And I don't think there's one written down that had, but I mean.
Before they fell asleep.
Okay, I'm going to call time on that. And we're going to do some questions from the internet.
Okay.
Started debating there, huh, guys? This question is for Mr. Ryan. This is from Miss Emily once more.
Hey,
If
Emily.
you don't think that faith is sufficient enough to know God exists or have a relationship with God, how can you have faith in any relationship you have on earth, friends, family, or even your girlfriend?
Sure. I can go to my girlfriend's house. I can give her a hug. I can kiss her on the lips. I can have a physical relationship with her. So that is a completely different relationship than when you're talking about having a relationship with a deity who you can't do those physical things with. So when I talk about faith, I'm not talking about I put my faith in somebody that when I say I put my faith in somebody, it's because I have no reason to believe that they can do the action that is required of them. So for instance, if I were to want a portrait of myself painted, I could contact a random artist that I was told is a good artist by somebody, and I would be putting my complete faith in the fact that they are going to draw a good portrait of me. I've never met them before. I don't know who they are. The person who told me that they were a good artist, I met on the side of the street. That to me is faith. If I were to ask my girlfriend, who is an artist, to paint a portrait of me, I have seen her work before. I can look at her work, I can watch her paint somebody else, and I can have confidence, or better yet, she can instill trust in me, or I can instill trust in her. So it goes beyond faith when you're talking about human relationships. When you're talking about a relationship with a deity, then you are using faith. And to me, that just, it isn't reliable enough. Because if I say, I prayed to God, Did he answer my prayer? Did he not answer my prayer? How often does he answer my prayers? I don't know these things. I can't know these things. And so therefore I'm using faith, and I'm putting my faith in God. But if I were to say, if I were to get an answer from, say, my mother about how to cook a quiche, right? Because I have no clue how to cook a damn quiche. But then I would be putting my trust in my mom because I know she's a good chef. I've seen her cook before. I've eaten her food. So it goes beyond faith the second you bring in human relation.
Yeah, thank you. Another question from the Facebook source is for Mr. Ryan as well. How does the resurrection of Jesus relate to the evidence of aliens? Can you re-explain your point, please?
Sure, I will be glad to. Let me pull up my little handy-dandy laptop.
I'm sorry, that was from a Miss Haley, by the way.
I will just go ahead and reread that short statement. Okay, and now this evidence that I'm about to give for the for the validity of the resurrection is used by multiple theologians and apologists. The evidence that is used the evidence used to make this claim, Jesus' resurrection, valid is the following. It was recorded in a historical document, which we can argue the historicity of the Bible, but I will give that much to it. It was recorded in a historical document. There were numerous witnesses, the 500 secondhand account and the dozen or so firsthand accounts, and his tomb was empty. So this evidence is what's used to validate the resurrection. On that same note, if we are to look at aliens, currently we have historical documentation of alien encounters. And we have it on the History Channel. We have it on different news sources. These things are recorded in history as a personal experience of somebody, which includes video evidence, which they didn't have 2,000 years ago. There are more than 500 living witnesses who can give you their firsthand account of this experience with alien encounters, not the 500 secondhand witnesses in the Bible. And the third one is, basically, since it is possible that life exists outside of Earth, that's justification as well, by the same standard.
Thank you. Real quick, if there are individuals that are still wanting to ask questions, a few more have arrived as well. So if we have the time,
and I'm willing to stay.
Oh, okay.
Could you please begin to line up once more on this side? That would be
Well, okay. Before
wonderful.
we open it back up for questions, thank you for everyone who made it through tonight. Just a quick reminder.